So the spring feasts are fulfilled. The fall feasts are left unfulfilled. So the spring feasts were for the first coming, and the fall feasts are for the second coming. So now, just as Jesus fulfilled these feasts for the first coming, now we have to see how this gets fulfilled for the second coming. And when we look at this, we have Peter coming out in Acts chapter 2, and what does Peter quote? Peter quotes in Acts chapter 2, he quotes Joel. Let's take a look. Peter's sermon. So the Holy Spirit falls on them, right? And this is on the Feast of Weeks. Now the Pentecost. And Peter starts this sermon. And here from 2:17 it says, "And it shall come to pass in the last days, says God, I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your young men shall see visions. Your old men shall see dreams. And on my maidservants and men servants and maidservants, I will pour out my spirit in those days, and they shall prophesy." Now, Joel chapter 2, this is actually Joel chapter 2, so we're going to go there. And this in Joel chapter 2, so this is where Peter was quoting from, was 2:28, "And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh." But if we go up to just before that for some context here, Joel chapter 2, verse 23, it says, "Be glad then, you children of Zion, and rejoice in the Lord your God, for he has given you," and this is going to be a very important piece. You're going to hear me talk about the former rain and the latter rain. And the former rain is what waters the early harvest. So when you plant when? You usually plant in the spring and you harvest in the fall. Well, when you plant in the spring, God sends the rains in the spring. And then when you're going to harvest in the fall, he sends the rain in the fall, and then you harvest. And this is what Joel is about to tell us, and it's not just Joel. You see, it says, "Be glad then, you children of Zion, and rejoice in the Lord your God, for he has given you the former rain faithfully, and he will cause the rain to come down for you, the former rain and the latter rain in the first month." So in this month, you have the former rain coming out and pouring out on who? What is the rain that's being talked about? When you go down here, it says the Holy Spirit is poured out. "I will pour out my spirit on all flesh." It's the Holy Spirit that is the rain. And the former rain is the rain that is poured out on the early feasts, the spring feasts. The Holy Spirit was poured out in abundance on the apostles. And what happens before Christ returns? Well, before Christ returns, the Holy Spirit has to be poured out again in the same way. And who does it get poured out on? Well, I'm going to tell you that. But first, let's finish up with this former rain and latter rain. Let's finish up with this pouring out of the Holy Spirit. James spoke of this former rain and latter rain as well. He was quoting Joel. Peter was quoting Joel when he came out and said, look, this is the rain. That's what you're looking at. This is why you hear us in your language. And James, in chapter 5, he says, "You have condemned, you have murdered the just, He does not resist you. And I will say that those who murder the just will get punishment. And Charlie Kirk was just. And I'm sure some of you are wondering, oh, what does this have to do with Charlie Kirk? Be patient. Let me get to it. So therefore, be patient, brethren, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, waiting patiently for it until it receives what? The early and latter rain. Be patient. The early rain was poured out. Patient. Let me get to it. So therefore, be patient, brethren, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, waiting patiently for it until it receives what? The early and latter rain. Be patient. The early rain was poured out. The latter rain still has to be poured out. How do we know that there is a latter rain? How do we know that the latter rain wasn't already poured out? Because it says that the witnesses in Revelation 11 says that the witnesses get the Holy Spirit. They're doing all of these things that the Holy Spirit does. Hosea. Now, this is an amazing prophecy. Hosea 6:2 says, after 2 days he will revive us. After 2 days. On the third day he will raise us up, that we may live in his sight. Let us know, let us pursue the knowledge of the Lord. His going forth is established as the morning. He will come to us like rain, like the latter and former rain to the earth. We are going to see a pouring out of the Holy Spirit before the second coming of the Lord. Now, this part right here that says, after 2 days he will revive us. What do we know about after 2 days he will revive us? Let's take a look here. In order to understand that after 2 days he will revive us, and that prophecy in Hosea is 100% talking about the former rain and the latter rain. It's talking about the time leading up to the receiving of the Holy Spirit and the time leading up to the return of Jesus Christ. And here in 2 Peter 3:8, 2 Peter 3:8 says, but beloved, do not forget this one thing, that with the Lord 1 day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as a day. Now, where does Peter get this from? Peter gets this from several places. But let me point something out. 2 verses later, what is he talking about? The day of the Lord. He says, beloved, do not forget this one thing. And then he goes on to talk about the day of the Lord. A day is 1,000 years. So the day of the Lord is what? It's not a day. It's 1,000-year period. A 1,000-year reign of Christ. And where do we get that from? Revelation chapter 20 tells us all about the 1,000 years that we reign here with Christ. Who? Who reigns with Christ? Those who were beheaded for their testimony of Jesus Christ. This is Revelation chapter 20, verse 4. Now, the day of the Lord, here we have a day is 1,000 years. Where else do we get it from? Look at this, Psalm 90. For 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it is past, and like a watch in the night. Now, inside of this, we have a day is 1,000 years. And let me see if I can pull up a couple of things here. And what I'd like to do to go into this day is 1,000 years a little bit deeper, just so you have an understanding. This is not something being made up today. This is not something that, people today are like, okay, I need this to mean this. This was a concept that was understood by the original church, the very first church that was set up. which is why Peter was saying it.